welcome to everybody. And Cam says we all know each other. We're going to skip introductions just so we can get back on schedule. So we do have a review of our minutes and conflict of interest disclosure. Can I get any corrections to the minutes or else a motion?
I'll second that motion.
Did you get that, Nick? All right.
You got it?
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. So let's then turn it over to Katie for information and discussion. What are you going to talk about, Katie? Right.
Katie, you're up.
Welcome people to annual.
Our registration numbers, we have about 575 people registered this year, so we have a pretty good turnout. Our exhibit hall, there are some exhibitors who weren't able to show up, but other than that, it was sold out for. I also want to make sure you guys get the passports. We have them at the registration desk. We heard a lot of good things from both attendees and exhibitors last year about the passports, and it got everybody kind of networking and involved. And we will be giving raffle prizes at the Friday lunch. You have to be present to win. And we have 8 prizes to give away. Is there anything else I need to say?
Can I just remember when we as a body, as a board, decided to approve the funding to hire Katie's position? I know.
Thanks, Katie. Okay.
That has paid off. And really quickly, we just want to point out what we have for you in front of you. We have a book from Dan Karolek, who will be one of our keynotes tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the exhibit hall. He'll be doing a book signing. We'll have some more copies of those books there as well. But you can bring your copy to get it signed if you'd like. And then we also have a little jar of honey for you. If you're lucky enough, you'll see it says what county it was made in. If you're lucky enough to have a Wasatch County honey in front of you, you have some of the bees in my backyard. So, local honey from all around the state, or at least 3 counties. So enjoy.
Okay. So next thing, before I recognize Molly, who's going to talk about recognition for retiring elected officials and longtime staffers. I also just want to thank members of this board who have served on it, and I think almost all of us are going to be reappointed or whatever. Mayor Walker has the secret keys to that, but I know Dustin is not, right? So thank you for your service, and thank you. It's been great to work with you, and I miss you. So,
Thank you.
okay. Anybody else? Anybody else?
Election, we don't know what's gonna happen there, so we'll just continue. Molly.
Excellent. So, as you'll see, tomorrow we have a video that we run every election year that recognizes retiring elected officials. And at mid-year, we were able to recognize our job for those years of service, but we recognize that our recognition for staff has been fairly ad hoc over time. And we would like to do something that is a little bit more formalized and objective in recognizing our city administrators who are dedicating their lives to making our communities a better place. So one thing that we would like to do with board approval is to look at creating a community champion award that we could facilitate in collaboration with UCMA, UMA, and the recorder to recognize the staff in our cities who serve for either recognizing them formally at their retirement or once they've served a set period of time, like 20 years, so we can definitely explore what that is. But that's something that as staff we thought would be better, be formalized to better recognize our people as they are heading out the door. Contributed so much time to these causes, so we just wanted to present that to the board for your feedback.
Fabulous idea.
Great.
I think it's a great idea and, unfortunately, people don't get recognized when they walk out the door, right? But there are a lot of people that have contributed and a lot of staff members, city managers, city attorneys who have dedicated time to this organization and they also, they make our cities tick too. So, yeah, we should do that. Anybody have any issue with that? We just need to get direction on this. So without,
Need a motion?
without objection, we'll give you staff direction to pursue this. Is that fair?
We also ought to give the city recognition that donated the most employees.
Maybe a very specific award this year.
You have to recognize half of the employees of Mill Creek that came from, we stole them from everybody, fair and square. Okay, so then, we have, commission reports and appointments. This Liam. Where are you, Liam? There he is.
So we have a couple that are outstanding and need to be filled. A couple that need to be filled, one is the joint highway committee, which we had quite a few appointments on. And then the other is the utility report. Joint highway committee meets twice a year and ultimately we have recommendations to the Utah Transportation Committee on funding the projects. And staff is recommending for appoint Keith Bismay, city engineer, public works director in Burnham. He is one of the specific regions that we need to hit, as well as having some at-large members of that. And then the utility facility review board, established with the local governance of public utilities, regarding the lighting and construction of facilities. Troy Fitzgerald has been serving on that, the city manager of Springville. And his term had just expired. He told me, I believe he said he only had one dispute that he had to go to in the last 4 years, that he was willing to continue to serve on that board. That would be staff recommendation to appoint.
Okay, thanks, Liam. Any discussion on those potential appointments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to make those appointments.
Motion to adopt the recommendation by staff.
Okay, so that motion by Mayor Ramsey, seconded by Councilmember Bradshaw, effectively, right? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, so I having had the distinct pleasure of serving on the nominations committee in the past, because that's the role of the second vice. I know it's a difficult job. And, it's a credit to the organization, to our staff, and to the leadership of this board, actually, through the years that we are fortunate to have more applicants for board positions and officers of this organization than we have slots to fill. So some of you may have not been when I did it, and you're on now, and you may have gotten a phone call from me or a text or a meeting, and it's a really hard conversation to have with somebody that who wants to be on the board that they were not selected by the nominating committee. But that is a function of the fact that we get many qualified applicants every year, and that we try to do geographic representation as well as representation by the class of cities, so that everybody feels represented, and everybody is represented, I guess. So anyway, I want to thank Mayor Walker and the other members of the nominating committee for the work that they did this year. And I know that they had even more applicants and have even more issues this year. So, and Mayor Walker just ducked out. So
Do you blame him? It was a tough process.
it was a tough process. But anyway, I want to thank those folks for doing that. And then we need to appoint a credential committee to function at that business meeting, to basically be in charge of counting votes and that kind of stuff.
So Nick can present that.
All right, Nick.
On credentials?
Yes.
Okay. So this year, we are proposing a group similar to last year of our staff to run that table and make sure all of our voting is in proper order. You can see in this memo here, Carson and Liam would be the co-chairs, and members of this committee would include Molly, Joe, and Cassidy. You're familiar with the process at the business session. You'll come up to their table, check in as your city, receive the amount of votes that you're entitled to, and go from there. Then they will check in, they will wire the numbers up to Roger, who is our parliamentarian during the business session as our general counsel, and let us know how many people we have credentialed and registered in the meeting. So with that, we would ask the board for a motion to approve or to appoint the 2023 credential committee as included in the memo.
I second that.
Okay, you get that? Who made that? I didn't. Okay, thank you. Okay, awesome. All right, so any further discussion on appointment of the credentials committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks you guys for doing that. All right, resolutions committee, Mayor Kafusi, you're gonna take this one?
Yeah, Justin and.
Actually, I chair this, maybe Justin, go ahead.
Mayor-
We have two resolutions that were brought forward. We presented them both at our LPC in August, and then in between that time and now, we had input from several people, particularly on the preemption resolution. But then met as the resolutions committee. What was it, all the way yesterday, I guess, it's been so long, roughly 15 hours ago, we met together and approved two resolutions to move forward to the full body on Friday. As far as the dignity and civility in local politics, so 2023-001. This one, if you recall, that was approved and forwarded by the board. So if you don't remember, this is yours. And so when this is presented on Friday, we would like to ask the board if you're willing to come up to the stage and show in a sign of support for this as it's being presented. We'll get up there, we'll present it. We haven't had a lot of either serious feedback or pushback on this one, but did have some good discussion the other day in our resolutions committee. But would ask board members if you're willing to come up and as a show of support, be up on stage when this one is being presented in the business meeting. Mary, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I want to say a little bit more about this. So, some of you may recall, we have had discussions on this with the board previously. And we did adopt the recommendation. I think was Isaac and Paxton and Kafusi were concerned, among others, that we didn't want this resolution to create a tripwire for us with respect to not adopting something if not all cities in the state adopt this or something like that. So we did take the language in it and make it be more, I don't know, encouraging. That we're encouraging communities to promote this kind of civil discourse, and we aren't trying to impose any kind of mandate or requirement. So I think we've struck a balance there to make sure that the language is appropriate in case people have concerns about that. But we did spend some time wordsmithing that to make sure that that concern was addressed.
Thank you for considering it and doing that. That meant a lot.
The other thing I'll add on this resolution is we had a really good discussion at LPC, which doubles as the resolutions meeting yesterday, about really what is the purpose of these resolutions. So I want to take just 30 seconds to explain how these resolutions impact our work as lead staff on your behalf. With this particular resolution, this isn't necessarily about policy. The one Justin will present momentarily on preemption is all about policy. This one is really more about how we engage with one another. So assuming the membership endorses it, what this message sends to us is, as Molly in her role as deputy director is building out our programming, how do we help equip local elected officials to navigate the tricky waters of, to use the governor's phrase, disagreeing better? We had, in fact, I don't think I told you this, Mayor Silvestrini, but after LPC yesterday, I called Mayor Baker from Naples, as he was outspoken during the call yesterday, concerned about potential consequences of this resolution. We had a good chat, and I assured him that we want vigorous debate. We want vigorous debate in this board. We want vigorous debate within this organization. A vigorous debate gets us to good outcomes. It's really about, can we have vigorous debate in a respectful way? And then how can we as league staff help you and your colleagues navigate the turbulent times that we're in? So that's how we view this resolution, is it gives us that direction for as we build out future programming. The preemption one, that's a more traditional policy resolution, and all the policy resolutions that league members have adopted during my time at the league are all available on our website. And it's really the policy platform of the league. So if I were to retire tomorrow, which I won't, but if I were to retire tomorrow, there's institutional.
I'm retiring tomorrow.
Right, right. There's that institutional knowledge that's built into that policy platform. So that's the value of them for us.
And the other thing we kind of talked about it, I think that the question that we discussed at LPC was kind of like, what's the point of these resolutions? Do they really do anything? You know, what's the purpose of it? And I think the purpose of it is, you know, first of all, it sets our organization. It gives us basically some guidelines and values in a way, you know, and it also sets policy for our staff and allows us to as a board basically to frame policy for the whole league based upon these things that are voted upon by our whole membership. So, you know, when the membership votes, you know, we only do this once a year, but when the membership votes, it gives us all some direction to kind of, you know, frame our policy and you know, and if we need to pull them out and show them to the legislature, we can do that too. So.
And Mayor, if I can add on to that, the thing that a resolution does not do is not take the place of an actual LCC vote on a particular bill. So that was one of the concerns somebody brought up is, you know, if we vote on this, you know, does it take away our negotiating power? You know, do we not deal with individual policies? No, we will still bring back individual policies after we've gone through negotiations before by the resolutions, but we will say, here's HB, you know, whatever number, 153. How do we feel about this? So nothing about the resolution preempts where we're going in a second. Preempts us from taking action on something else later.
How many board members were here during the inland port litigation? So basically the officers, right? Because you've been around a while. So I didn't say you were old. I said you've been around a while. We had a league resolution on some key governance principles, some of which dovetail into the preemption on Justin's about described. And when that was litigated, we actually, before it was even litigated, when we were negotiating with the governor's office, we used line for line language from that resolution. And one of my favorite moments working for this organization was that Sunday night. We had a call with the officers and we walked through the proposal that the governor had sent us that he'd been negotiating with Salt Lake City Council at the time. And then first thing Monday morning, I called every board member, walked them through it, said we think it's consistent with the principles here, or it's inconsistent here. And then they were having a press conference at 10 a.m. in the Gold Room at the Capitol. They were waiting for me to get there to give them the thumbs up that it was consistent with league principles before they started the press conference. And we had that resolution in advance, which then informed it was not a perfect special session bill. In fact, my memo basically said these areas are consistent with our resolution, this area still need work. But Mike Maurer met me outside the Gold Room. Said, where are you guys at? I handed in the memo. He said, I don't have time to read this. I said, I know, we're good with these pieces. These pieces still need work. Great. We promise we'll keep talking. And then they went in and started the press conference, but they were waiting on us. And it was because, you know, as we were having that quick Sunday night meeting with the officers, we could rely on the principles from that resolution.
Thanks, Cam. So.
And Mike Maurer just texted me, so it's almost like he knew what I was talking about.
So this is a question for Roger or Jared, but this is the LPC is recommended or approve these. Does the board need to recommend them to the membership?
My view, you've already sent them to the LPC. The vote if you want to.
So we're really
Yeah.
You don't need to take a vote.
yeah, we're just being important right now.
Okay, all right, then we won't vote on them until.
Here, if I might, one comment just procedurally. When we set this particular process in the bylaws, it was a response to an experience where we had a sort of a mini brawl on the floor over a resolution we thought had been decided. And we had whole series of back and forth. It was not a particularly healthy situation where we ended up. So the process was to turn it back to the LPC to become a resolutions committee, and that's where the work and debate over the working out language was to take place. And it has to have a 2/3 vote of approval out of that resolutions committee to even go to the annual meeting. That's already taken place. I say that in the sense that while the bylaws are silent as to amendments, the basic premise at this point, when it comes up to the body, it's an up or down vote. So we're not, the goal is not to rewrite it, not to do language. If there's a technical error, fine. But I only point that out, Mayor Kafusi, if you'll be running that meeting or whom, is that essentially, if you've got problems with it, we've had at least 2 full meetings to talk about this opportunities, but it's either voted up or down at this point.
Okay, thank you. I know that they can be amended on the floor because I've done time myself, but
But a wholesale 30 or 40 word change, but that's what I'm cautioning about is that.
thank you, Roger. All right, so we won't take a vote on that, then we'll move on to Cam, I think, talking about creation of an ex officio board position.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. This is a request to the league board to modify the league bylaws. Let me take a step back and explain what's in our constitution versus what's in bylaws. The constitution is actually what creates you as a board. 21 members of cities from all 8 regions, 2 cities from first or second class, and 1 town. So that's in the constitution, as well as the city manager from the UCMA recommendation. Then in the bylaws, you can see the bylaws create the treasurer, which is Mary Mayor Brett Hales. It also creates the ex officio positions of the representative from the Municipal Clerks Association and the General Counsel. If we change the overall board, that has to go actually to the membership through a constitutional amendment. What we're proposing here is you can do by changing the bylaws. Here's what we'd like to accomplish here. We are requesting first this bylaw change that allows you to create special purpose ex officio board positions. So that'll be a motion to amend the bylaws. And then the second motion would be to accomplish what we'd like to accomplish here. And so let me pivot to that piece. Right now, the league has 1 representative on the UEOC. That representative is Mayor Ramsey, who's the immediate past president of the league for another couple of days. Come next week, we no longer will have Mayor Ramsey on the board, but she'll still be representing the league in these really important circles at the Capitol. Well, whether it was Mayor Ramsey or Mayor Ramsey were to retire and run for president tomorrow of the United States, which I wouldn't recommend.
Good idea.
Wow.
Regardless of who the league represented, regardless of who the league representative is on the UEOC, we as staff feel like it's important that we have essentially that board endorsement of whoever that representative is, rubbing shoulders with the governor and the speaker and the president. So our recommendation here would be to say that for as long as the UEOC exists, that whoever the league appoints to the UEOC, if that person is not a sitting board member, then that person would be an ex officio board member. So they still have that tie back to the board in all of those meetings that are happening at the Capitol. So that's the first outcome related to UEOC. The second piece, which we are not going to ask for a vote on today, gets to something that this board did last year that we thought worked well, and we'd like to do it again next year when the new board meets later this month. Last year, because the league officers who meet with league staff regularly and are at the Capitol on a regular basis, because the league officers last year were all Wasatch Front communities, we elevated a member of the board who represented a community off the Wasatch Front that was essentially recommended by the other communities on the board to be, and for lack of a better term, liaison with the officers and participate with the officers when we were meeting with the governor's office. And like that way we made sure that as a statewide organization, we had statewide perspective, even though all of the officers were from the Wasatch Front. So we'd like to do that again at the next meeting, because then we'll have a new board and we'll know who's there. For purposes of today, we're requesting you update the bylaws. That would be motion number 1. And then motion number 2 would be that we'd have an ex officio board member that is the UEOC representative. Right now, that would be Mayor Ramsey, but it would be anybody in the future who represents the league on the UEOC.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to amend the bylaws to create an ex officio board position?
Question first.
So, you know, the first part of this is all talking about treasurer, so at that last line then is just any particular ex officio position that the current board would feel is necessary, they would be able to put in place, is
Yes.
that what you're
Yep.
saying? Okay, just wanted to clarify that, because it just, you know, the way it started kind of was strange.
If I might, since I put it together, it was meant to authorize you as a board to create special purpose ex officio positions. The other three are sort of permanent, but you can, their second motion is, it deals with
Right.
a particular issue.
And those positions can be appointed at any time.
Yeah.
As the board's top there.
The board sees fit. Yep.
We can do what we want, when do we want? Oh, I'm in favor.
I'll make a motion to amend the bylaws as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second to amend the bylaws to allow us to appoint ex officio board positions. Further discussion?
Just one question. So if we can point any of them, that language doesn't say that it's different from the language above, which is within the 30 miles. So are we saying that it could be from anywhere?
Yes, so you can see, these are the standing rules attached to the bylaws, they're at the very end. This portion creates the treasurer, and then this says what the treasurer can do. Each
Right.
one of these is self-contained. Then
Okay.
you'll
so
get to
self-contained.
something here that says
They have nothing to do.
municipal clerks is an ex officio member of the board of directors, general counsel of the league is an ex officio member of the board of directors. And
Yeah.
then we could say anytime we wanted to create a special purpose one, we could add that on and the list could go on and on and on. And then when those go away, we'd remove them. Rather than doing that, we say that the board can create special purpose. So they're all self-contained.
I just wanted to make sure that they didn't have that same caveat of the 30-mile, limitations.
And the person can vote no if they want to, correct?
All right,
Yes.
does that clarify? Are you satisfied, Carrie?
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, second motion.
So the second motion would be to create per this bylaw, special purpose ex officio board position, which would be the league's representative on the UEOC. So creating that position, which again, right now is filled by Mayor Ramsey.
I think we would phrase that as, if not a current board member, the league appointment to the UEOC is an ex officio board member.
Point.
Okay,
So moved.
all right, thanks. Multiple seconds. All right, any further discussion to that one?
Can I just say something to it? The reason I'm supportive of this and appreciate it coming up in conversation is exactly because I am rolling off the board, but it does come down to credibility. This isn't about me. This is about whoever's representing us on UEOC. And if they're not part of the board in any way, shape, or form, why do they have to care what we have to say? It's fine for them to care that I'm representing these communities right now. But if it's not me and it's somebody else who's not part of the board, or if it is me and they're like, yeah, you're out, like you're, you are a has-been and whatever. I think there's value in making sure that whoever represents us on UEOC is, and to be quite honest, as far as this situation, for just as long as I'm on UEOC, I didn't want to run for a board position that somebody else in the state wanted, and could have. I thought that doesn't feel like the right thing to me either, that the UEOC person runs for another seat that they don't currently hold anymore. I thought, there's got to be maybe a better way. I appreciate this idea of it because I think it meets the objective of this organization of making sure we have somebody, but also doesn't take a seat. Like me applying for a seat that I just am rolling off of. Does that make sense? Anyway, so
Keep that.
I do think this accomplishes the objective, and I like that you said for as long as it exists, because UEOC was created by this administration. We don't know if it's going to stick around. We don't know how long it'll be here. And so I assume that whenever it doesn't, then this ex officio board position would go away if the UEOC goes away, right?
Okay.
Okay, anyway, just wanted to weigh in. But it's kind of an awkward thing for me. And I thought, I'm going to be honest, I've thought a lot through this. My objective is to do what's going to represent us best. And I think making sure that whoever that person is has the credibility of being part of this board and part of these conversations. That matters. when we speak at UEOC.
Thank you, Mayor.
So,
Seth,
Just a quick thought, this probably goes without saying, but I think you've done an excellent job in representing cities and the role that you played and have been very effective. I think you being a part of the discussions here and having the support, having the voice of this body as you go into those meetings is extremely powerful for you and helpful for you. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm really supportive of it.
Yes. Not till Friday.
yeah, and she deserves kudos for being the only member that had to vote no and standing up for our principles and stuff like that in a room where not everybody's receptive to that too, I think.
Yes.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of that motion? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Hearing none is approved. You're it. Okay, all right. Okay, I think that finishes item 6, and we're down to advocacy engagement updates, which is F, so.
Perfect. The last thing I'll say before we jump into the advocacy piece is, we thanked Mayor Walker before, but we had almost 4 times the number of candidates apply for the league board, 4 times the number of spots, or 4 times the number of candidates that we had available for second vice. I was at the National League of Cities State Leagues Director event last month. And there were multiple state league directors who were asking for advice on how to get people to run for their board. They couldn't find people who were willing to run. And I said, well, I'm blessed to be in a position where we have a lot of interest on very talented, capable people who want to be part of the organization. And we see it as a good problem to have, but it's also a challenge to make sure that we're engaging with all 1,430 mayors and council members across the state. And the investment this board has made in expanding our staff is going to help us be able to do that at a higher level. So I just want to say thank you to those who are running. Thank you for those who have served in that capacity. And I think it speaks well to the organization. We just finished our caucus meetings a few minutes ago, and league staff is prepared to take less than 2 minutes to just give a quick snapshot of what was heard in each caucus. I've had a couple of board members who have asked about issues that are not in the UEOC portfolio. And Justin, I don't want to steal your thunder for Friday, but it's a staggering number of bill files that are already open, and the UEOC doesn't even have bill files open for a lot of their. So at some point later this fall, we do hope to be able to pivot away from UEOC related items to come back and ask for prioritization of different topics. That day is not today, because timing wise, the next UEOC where Mayor Ramsey will have to cast a vote on every recommendation coming before them will be on October 18th. So between now and then, in the next 6 weeks, they're finishing recommendations on growth and transportation, on housing, on water, on all of those pieces. Good news is we have a league board meeting in 3 weeks, as well as LPC, and then we'll have another league board meeting on Monday the 16th prior to that UEOC meeting. So there's a lot we'll be bringing back to you in the next 5 to 6 weeks in anticipation of Mayor Ramsey casting that vote. So with that being said, we're going to do just a quick around the horn of what we heard from caucus discussions. We're going to start with the rural caucus, and Liam, all jokes aside about a stopwatch, let's rock and roll. All right, let's do it.
Okay, well, here. From what probably most of you saw in your caucus, they're split them out in urban. I would say one thing that stood out was we talked a lot about the different percentages, and a lot of people in our caucus did not agree that those were necessarily reflective of their communities. So there's more information to go in there, of course, but I thought that was really interesting to find out. We had a lot of good discussions there. And we talked about some of those different policies, modular housing, parking, the great feedback there. And one of the top things that we heard was just legislature is moving fast and changing a lot of goalposts, and we appreciate some time to implement those policies, and that they had a really valid concern that it costs them a lot of money to have to be doing those ordinances, and they don't necessarily have a staff budget to always be keeping up with that. So that's what we got, and some exciting momentum toward maybe having a rural policy task force to get together and be meeting together, so it's really.
Perfect. Thank you, Liam. And one of the policy items that they were probably referencing about the need to comply with is the subdivisions bill. Now, the good news is we just signed the MOU. Where's Jerry? Was it last week? Was it Tuesday? In recent days. Yeah, and so last year we secured $4 million of one-time dollars for technical assistance to help cities update their subdivision ordinances. And really the focus of that money is to help smaller communities. Out of quick curiosity, how many of you have started that process in your cities to update your subdivision ordinances?
Done.
Done? Oh, well, that was fast. Okay. As a reminder, for cities above 5,000, you have to be compliant by February 1. For cities below 5,000, it's the following December 31st of 2024. We have resources here to help your community, and those state dollars will start flowing in the next few days for communities to hire consultants with those state dollars to update those ordinances. So the other thing in the rural space is we signed the contract yesterday with the state of Utah for local administrative advisor. You approved accepting that money a few weeks ago, but it got signed yesterday, and so the money will start flowing so that the AOGs can start hiring local administrative advisors to help local communities. So exciting news on both of those fronts.
I don't know how to say this, but I know some of the smaller communities are needing the help the most for our local assistance, but they're getting some pushback for the outside is coming in to change us because the state's pushing all these things and that they're sending these people in to tell us how to do it. And so what is our marketing and messaging with that other than we're just here to help you in a professional manner for wherever you're at, you know, because I think that some of them might not participate because they think it's Salt Lake or the legislature forcing someone to come help them and it will change their quality of life. At least I've heard that from several communities.
Well, I will say, and not necessarily on the subdivisions piece, because I also have heard a lot of resistance to the subdivision amendments. I think a lot of that is born of a misunderstanding of what actually is being asked of them. But the thing that I have heard positive about is the local administrator.
Talking just about the local administrator.
Yeah, well, I've heard communities welcoming that is like with a sigh of relief. Out in the Uinta Basin, I went out there and they were like all saying, this is the best thing since sliced bread. We really need this help. So I don't know that I don't know where that's coming from. I know a lot of communities are welcoming that too. So.
Right. Well, I think that they should welcome it, but at the same time, I can understand where some of them might be leery because they've done the way things
right about that.
Way they do it, right? And they're just leery of who's telling them something different when in reality, the professional is coming in and they're telling them what state law is and just helping them figure out how they implement that. And maybe some of those smaller communities have never really paid attention, so they're not really sure that they're in violation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted you to know that I've gotten some feedback about that.
There's gonna be the piece of, they might find things that they have to say, so that could cost money or that could present problems because.
Might be the reason that they're saying they don't want.
And that could just be a natural consequence, if you will, of just finding someone that knows what they're doing.
Molly and Dawn have their hands up, so.
Sure, I would also. Think that right of the sentiment, we don't want someone to be safe or someone who wants to tell us what to do, is because it has taken us so long to find the state that we don't have a lot of tangible meat on the bones for this, and so they don't know who their local administrative advisor is. And so I think a lot of this will bear out. And I understand the skepticism. I think it's not warranted, but I'm of the opinion that if we actually get this up and running, it will demonstrate the value. It is an opt-in program. If people don't want to take advantage of it, community people are supposed to be getting that increased service. And I think that it's ultimately a program that will succeed based on its own merits. And like as cities see the benefit that others are able to draw from it, they will understand the value it gives them as well.
Well, one thing I was thinking with that is the cities that are the first ones to try it, you know, maybe get some of those quotes from those mayors that say, this has been so beneficial, our little town couldn't do this until then, and then other mayors and maybe within the same AOG would see that, or without saying, oh, that's the same city that's similar to us,
Yeah.
might be okay, right?
That's a great point. And actually in our meeting that we had this week, Travis Keel with 6th County, they've been piloting this kind of this program. And they were able to demonstrate just the amount of projects that they've been able to do. And it's been substantial. And so maybe it's even just showing this is the type of work that has been done that could be helpful. And if you want to reach out to this city and say, what was this experience like for you? They could do that. And I think that's really helpful.
The other thing that the way this is being rolled out too is that it's being explained to communities by their local AOG representative, who I think they know that they're familiar. And so I think that there will be some trust built that way too.
Yeah, thank you. I had never considered that there could be anybody thinking this was the state coming to tell them what to do, because this was born of so many rural communities saying, we need help, we need help, we need help, we just need help. There's so much being given to us and we just don't have the resources or the personnel, you know? So that's interesting to me. That never crossed my mind. However, I think the points have been good, that that's not at all what this is. This is an offer for help for communities who want to take advantage of it and feel like, yeah, we could really use some help. Could you answer this question? Could you answer this question? Could you guide us in this? We're thinking about doing this. We're not sure how to go about it. That was really the intention of what this is. And I don't think it's a, you know, as Molly said, it's opt-in. I don't think it's a city administrator, shared administrator inserting themselves in their city. Hey, I'm here to tell you what to do and what you, I think if that does happen, that needs to be ended quickly, because that's not what this program was intended to be. So I really do think it will be a lot better than anyone who might be concerned thinks it will be. And there were so many who asked for help.
Yes,
That's why we were.
that's my point is that when it started, 5 years ago, how many of those mayors and councils have now moved on, right? And it's new people who don't know where it started from. And so they come in and we kind of have, not that I'm the only one who's noticed, but there's some conspiracy theories out there, right? And so those newer people might be coming in saying, well, what's going on here? And so I think I keep directing people back to the original thoughts, right? When it came up and why we want this, but just recognizing the turnover that happens in our cities and how quickly that happens. Maybe we just haven't been showcasing it because we've been working on it, but not everyone has seen the behind the scenes of why it's now here.
It will bear out, like I said.
I think you're right, Molly.
And the final thing on that, I know we're running behind, is that Gary and Liam are going to be addressing this at the Rural Breakfast on Friday, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to reiterate the intention behind it and how it will work, and that it won't just be someone kicking down the doors of City Hall in 2022.
I'm just saying that from the rural Utah, everybody that I've heard from is getting the additional help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, Liam, thank you for that report. Meg, Resort Community Caucus.
Delivering the salient messages back from the Resort Caucus, small but mighty. They applaud the board framing questions that we were given, the 4 questions, particularly the quality of life and character, because they feel like their brand is under attack, and it's of utmost importance that we articulate the quality of life and uniqueness of our Utah communities. And that they feel like recent legislation has caused problems and they're losing that uniqueness and brand. And particularly economically, and maybe use that as an argument, not just, some other argument, but given economic factors. Telling our story, they're saying, look at resort communities. We're doing a lot of unique, innovative things in different ways.
we've had to innovate because of our either location or situation. So try to get that story out. Ongoing concerns, short-term rentals, particularly concerned about the initial feedback on the guiding our growth survey. 60% of undeveloped area, people want growth along areas that are undeveloped, and that's very alarming to resort communities because the natural beauty and the resort and the open space is a big draw of this state, right? Tourism and open spaces and mountaintops, and that alarmed them. Does that mean there's just an open gate for development? Home ownership dilemma. We kind of are tied at the local level because we have no right to legislate home ownership. So that's a dilemma. And that the ideas they had on partnerships was that's going to take some time because we're already in defense mode, but maybe a targeted campaign, taking the caucus group idea and meeting with the representatives from each caucus over the summer. And again, a request to try to do carve outs with bills to kind of, not that it's the best legislation, but to get around the one size fits all. Particularly, again, design was a huge issue for our communities, having the repeal on the ability to design, going to brand and uniqueness. And the question is, how does the state work with us? And that was instead of how do we work with the state? And will we ever be able to achieve that, or is the power imbalance always going to leave us at a disadvantage?
Excellent. Thank you, Meg. And Mayor Wright from Tory represents towns on our board, but is the de facto resort community representative on our board. He's out of town today since his regrets, but thank you for the report of a really good caucus discussion. Next, we split rapid growth into two groups this year. So Justin, you oversee rapid growth in general, so I'll turn it to you on how you want to break it up. Okay.
So I think we were rapid growth B, not correlation switch, but I think we were the smaller rapid growth communities. We had a really excellent conversation today, a lot of reflection on the guiding our growth points. One thing that we heard in that group that I think is really important to reiterate is while those results, the high level results on residents wanting a certain housing type or a certain development pattern might fit what their residents want, that all falls apart when you ask people what they want next door to them. And so that's part of the need for local planning and being able to actually manage that, making sure that it's in the right place, where matters, and so being able to accommodate all of that. Some conversations on partnership. Partnership looks like infrastructure in time. One idea was state gap funding for federal grants with a really high local match level, where it's just really difficult for smaller communities, especially the shoulder communities, to hit those thresholds, and this could help accelerate growth. Cities are updating their general plans, but that takes time and resources, and you can't force property owners to pull permits, particularly a lot of these communities where the market pressure kind of fell out faster than maybe some of the urban areas, which still has some of those sustained growth pressures. On parking, really, the group really emphasized that one size fits all. You have communities off the Wasatch Front where you have larger vehicles, where you have different parking needs. If you have some of these in higher intensity developments, your parking plans just look very different. Traditional suburban network now looks different than urban. Most of the communities in our group didn't really have transit yet, so parking looks different at that angle as well. So that's my very quick recap. I'm sure Justin has some additional thoughts. Councilman Phillips was in our group if he has anything to add, but I think it was a really productive dialogue.
I would just say that a number of the communities said, look, we've got lots of housing plans they've already approved. Give us some time before you shove this stuff down us and let us try and accommodate what we've already got on the board.
Thanks.
As I'm playing rapid growth bingo here, I think I got it. Carson, you covered a lot of what we discussed. Councilman Phillips, you took the one I was to say, a lot of discussion about giving us time to implement and see what is working. There are several questions about the Guiding Our Growth survey and what those questions look like. So it will be good once we are able to share more of what the actual questions were and some of that methodology. So hope to hear more from Mark tomorrow and as the report comes out. And just want to reiterate what Carson said as well. There is definitely a sentiment that, while regionally or in general, we may like an idea, it may get different once you have somebody, doing that development in your backyard. So there's some messaging that the Guiding Growth is going to need to work through and work with all of these. working on the plan, but, Mayor Fulmer and Councilmember Egbert were in mind, so we could have anything I missed there.
Mayor Fulmer. You've had some legit comments. My struggle that I added in there was really about. If it's housing, how can a community like Mapleton that has 13,000 residents and several thousand entitled units and no grocery store? Can I get some help with commercial? Could we have a conversation there? And so I think we're not seeing all of the conversation. If it's like, here, let's put a ton of housing. Okay, well, I'm gonna have 20,000 something residents real fast and no grocery store. So.
Yeah, and I think I would add, I think you summed it up really well. I think additionally, one of the comments that we had was just, how is this being reviewed and taken back? Because like Jessica's saying, so much of these questions come down to our cities and then it's not tied to transportation, or did it go through the water group, or is it going through agriculture? And we were just hoping that Laura would express some of that tomorrow when she talks about who's going to review it and how that's going to look like when it comes back to us. Because in that caucus, we were saying so many of us are sitting there and we can go down all of the boxes and we just check them all off. And we've done all of those things. And then when we're looking at other cities outside of us, we were also saying, it's really interesting to think that some of those cities then will feel like they need to add additional stuff, but then that changes the way transportation dollars are affected, or it changes the way competitive grants go out for water. And so we just really wanted to see the other side of that data to make sure that policy is being driven in a way that makes sense for all cities of shapes and sizes. And then I kind of feel like, I don't know, did I hit on everything that we talked about? Just in general, people were hoping that they would stop regulating.
There's a lot of skepticism about the survey itself. I mean, like Justin said, I mean, it was like light a torch, and I wanted to say, well, wait till you talk about Envision Utah. Let's have a conversation about how that'll be interpreted. But yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Also with the whole, so yeah. I think one of the big things they hit on was there's just citywide management that can't be felt when you're making policy at the state. That happens where you're talking about parking and you're saying, well, are you accounting for everything we have to do with our public works when you're looking at parking? Or when you are implementing ADUs or different townhomes, or you're consolidating things like you only get one space for an ADU. Are you taking into consideration that now there's no additional, I mean, that's now creating a nuisance on our public streets or bleeding over into other neighborhoods? Or if you do want to regulate something like that, then are you also giving us the teeth to enforce things like people not using their garage space? And just some of the fallout that comes from citywide management that isn't being accounted for.
I appreciate a lot that we have some connection to systems thinking at this particular conference, because that really is the gap that I think we're observing. It's, here's my one piece of legislation, but the holistic impact, the systemic impact is really a gap. And maybe there's an angle we can take on the narrative, how we're communicating about systems that maybe we just haven't done before. Yeah, for another time.
Yeah, but I think with parking, if we're talking about ADUs, we can't talk about parking independent of talking about ADUs. They overlap so much. So as we're going back to our negotiations and our discussions, it's so important that we can highlight. You can't have this and this. It makes no sense, and they overlap, and we just don't.
And then the additional comment was, how are you showing us that your laws are doing something before you implement something else? So start giving us the data back, because we're bringing data a lot and we're showing you what we're doing, but show us what your laws.
Yeah, I think that's a common thread from what I can see in all these caucus meetings. It's like, we've done these things, the data reservoir is there. They have not given us any of that data yet. And, admittedly, but still, it's like, we should be legislating on the basis of the data, not based upon, you do more and more and more and more until finally you've crossed a tipping point and we don't even know it,
Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you, Mayor Fulmer and Councilmember Egbert, Carson as well for the 2 rapid growth reports. Let's go establish mid-size. So Molly or Roger.
Sure.
Do it,
So,
Molly.
establishment size, I'm gonna just focus on what hasn't kind of come up. A lot of the themes we discussed also arose in our group. For establishment size, for a lot of the conversations with those development types and land use decisions, a lot of our establishment size are built out, and it's not necessarily a flexible option that they have to be doing smaller lot sizes in greenfield developments. There's not a lot of greenfield development. So that was a really common theme of looking at these, again, this one size fits all isn't going to be appropriate in a lot of instances, and how you convey that narrative throughout with your legislators. Additionally, I thought we had some pretty interesting conversations around parking, specifically with some of these different housing types. One comment that came up that I thought was interesting, that for a lot of these more attainable and affordable housing types, it's in apartments, it's in these smaller units, but that a lot of these folks for trade workers have professional vehicles. And so it isn't necessarily even just the 2 vehicles you accommodate for the drivers of in the home, but also the vehicles that come with their work that need to be accommodated for as well. Additionally, one comment we received after the caucus was that a lot of apartment buildings are assessing additional fees for people to park within their structures. And so that parking is then all overflowing out onto the street because people don't want to pay. So I thought those were interesting points. We also had conversations about the regional thing, and just making sure that just because your city is the border, there's some flow and cohesion.
I think that's a really good point about paid parking. Cause I see that too. We put in these, well, we don't, but we allow these buildings to go in these apartments. Then the people are clogging the streets with their vehicles because they're charging to park inside the.
And the solution to that was they said, you just need to include it in the bond, right? You can't assess an additional fee. So people need to be able to park in your buildings or living in a building.
So are they suggesting we make an ordinance that require that?
Yes, that was Midvale, that's what they did. They made an ordinance that said that your apartment fee, like essentially your rent must include in parking. And stuff for business.
Excellent. Thank you for that report. The last caucus with cities, the first and second class. And I suppose the good news is that every point that's come up in other caucuses came up in our caucus. Mayor Ramsey, will you just hold up the city's work document there? Do you have in front of you? Yeah, the big one has my mugs on the back. Yeah, they're not that side, the other side.
Here, we're all gonna get one of these tomorrow. See, like, man handed me this, I don't know.
Will you autograph my picture, your picture?
That's the one. Hopefully everybody got one of these in caucuses with the registration desk. Cassidy put these to try to help connect you with your legislators. How many of you got a response back when you texted your legislator during? Awesome. Yeah, basically every hand went up in the first and second class caucus as well. And one of the key themes and partly why we hired Cassidy and with her communications expertise is to help us bridge this communications gap of the good things that are happening at the local level and the fact that a lot of legislators just don't know. And I think the frustration was palpable in our caucus of feeling like everything they saw on the screen from Guiding Our Growth is reflected in how cities in that caucus are planning. Legislators just don't know it. So how do we connect the dots there? Anything else you want to add? Those of you.
Just
who are
the
in
home
caucus?
ownership, we're really struggling with that problem.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big emphasis on trying to push home ownership initiatives. And we had a discussion about what the barriers really are and that there's differing stories about that. But that needs to be addressed. And same kind of thing I think I've heard from everybody. We need to figure out if what we have already been doing is working and take kind of a breather on some of this stuff before we come up with more mandates about things. And that in many respects, we were already doing the stuff that they're saying that we need to do. So
with that being said, we showed a slide during the caucuses of a bunch of the different policy ideas that are out there. And one of the ideas that we highlighted in green was around modular and offsite construction. Because as staff, as we've been digging into it, and I say we, as Jared, our new legal director, has been digging into it, we think there is some potential space for consensus in this area that could result in the outcomes that are consistent with our principles. So we want to take the next 10 minutes or so, have Jared present the framework, I guess pun intended, since we're talking about modular housing, but the framework, how we'd like to engage in the next few weeks, the UEOC on this topic, and get hopefully your support to proceed accordingly. Also give you a chance to ask questions, and again, make sure we know what that sandbox is as we continue the negotiations in that space. We could be here all night talking about all the other ideas. Ultimately, what we thought was the best use of time tonight, knowing it's been a long day, is focus on modular for the next few minutes, and then taking all the feedback that we've received from caucuses, we'll sit down, analyze it as staff, and as we're negotiating on these different pieces, bring it back to the board when the board meets later this month. So, Jared, you want to take it away? Nick, will you, in the board packet, in the Envision Utah section, go to page 25? Because one of the recommendations that Envision Utah will have in their report later this month is around modular housing. It's just a matter of what those specifics would look like. Page 25.
25.
Yep, that'll be the guidepost for us here for this discussion. So, Jared, take it away.
All right, Jared.
Here, if you want to better mic.
Yeah.
Number 6.
Thank you. So like Cam said, there's a lot of ideas swirling around, but modular homes is one that I think that we can get to a safe place, a good place. After discussions with members of the CHA, Commission on Housing Affordability, as well as other developers, we had a meeting with Ivory Innovations, which is, if you're not familiar, it's independent group that does research and out of University of Utah. And they came up with a model with Cam's love of Utah, University of Utah. So they came up with a model code, some general ideas of what a code might look like. Within that code, there were several different areas that are important, will be important moving forward on how cities generally feel about modular housing. Some of those are specifically are what law is used. Utah state law, Modular Building Institute. So we'll nail those down. Who still does the permitting of modular houses? Who sets the fees, the inspection fees, as well as the permitting fees, whether that be a state body or whether that be a city still, and who has enforceability authority to enforce those codes, both offsite and onsite. So as you know, as you see that picture there, with modular housing, it's built offsite and come and put on site and built on a permanent foundation. And
I have a question for you.
Okay.
In your list of who decides what things, we often have a fight at the state capitol about which building code we're adopting. Electrical codes, plumbing codes, international building codes. We adopt some very late. Brad Wilson tried to put the state on a schedule of, so we'd be behind the international code or the uniform codes by 3 to 6 years. And then sometimes groups go in and selectively pull things out. A company who was building one of these, in a surrounding state and then wanted to ship the components in. What are we going to do with the fact that if they were building them in Evanston and bringing them to the Wasatch Front, that Wyoming might have adopted a different code, or we might have adopted a different building code. So you have to, just for like a list of
potential
Sure.
problems?
So that's a great question, and I think in every meeting that I've been in all the discussions, everyone is on board with saying that it would be it would have to follow the building code, Utah Building Code, as well as and so that's, and right now the building code is defined as the fire code, all of the individual electrical code, and that is the state building code. So outside inspectors would have to abide by Utah code, building code, to inspect. And then before it's even sent from that facility, they would have to certify before it's sent. And then when it's sent to on-site, that's when the city inspectors would be able to inspect what's been done and also the installation. All according to the Utah building code.
Okay, so even if we're adopting late, or, because there could be a conflict where a nearby state, like if you're in southern Utah, they could be building them in Nevada and shipping them into Washington or St. George or wherever. And they might be on a different building code than we are, just because those get politically monkeyed with.
Yeah, how would you know that, like you said, if you're getting someone in St. George buying something out of Nevada and they don't have, and not that it's going to be built in St. George, but what if it was coming up to the Wasatch Front, the snow load, etc., different codes. How would you know just because they were inspected and certified there, would they be certified before they took the order, I guess, that company would know they were certifying it for point of sale in this another state and then have to comply with that at the point of build?
That is a good question, one that as far as when the build happens and when it's actually sent, is that your question?
Yeah.
And when it actually gets to on-site and what building code would apply? I think I think it would be when it ships from the facility, it would need to abide by current state building code. At that point, you would be treated as just as any other stick-built home has to abide by the current state building code.
And an engineer would have to stamp that. So as a city, if we knew something like that was coming in, our city engineers could look at it to say, yes, it's certified for Utah code.
Yes. Oh, it
Okay.
absolutely would be.
So we wouldn't get residents yelling at us,
No.
well, I ordered this, and I spent all this.
No, it would absolutely be, before it's even sent into Utah, it would need to be, the inspectors would have to be certified on Utah building code. And these are outside inspectors, and these are the ideas, right? That are going around, and generally, I mean, I haven't heard of any pushback saying that these inspectors would need to be certified according to be licensed to inspect these properties according to Utah building code. So that is, and just to kind of go on to the other aspects that I brought up as far as applicable law and those and fees and permits and enforceability. The feedback that I've received is from members of the CHA are that all of those should belong to cities, so that all of the inspection, on-site inspection, all of the setting of inspection fees and permit fees, all of those that actually permit and review the plans for the site would all be still through cities. Nothing would change there. The only change that would happen would be the third-party inspection outside of the state, or if we do have facilities within the state, we have a few, but not to the degree that outside entities are. That would be the only area where cities specifically would not be involved in the inspection. That would be third-party entities and inspection.
So I just want to emphasize what Jared's saying here, because he's just laid out really the two ends of the spectrum. And on one hand, you have the Ivory Innovations Model Code, which really was a state-controlled process. And what you have up on the screen here in front of you about this, statewide standards, there may be a place for certain statewide standards here. The other end of the spectrum is what he just indicated, that in a meeting he was in last week, there were several members of the CHA who said, actually, I think everything should stay at the city level except for the third-party inspection. That's certainly not where the home builders were at. And so you have those two ends of the spectrum. The question will be, where should we end up? I think we'd all agree we'd like to be at that end of the spectrum. The home builders would like to be on that end of the spectrum. And the negotiations the next couple of weeks are really going to focus on this, because this is the one item in the housing space right now that everyone said, hey, we think we can get to yes. But Jared's outlined, like, here are the key questions we have to answer, ranging from fees to permits and everything else.
And if I can jump on that, County Chair, and I think we're not bringing a policy right now saying, here's the policy we want to go with. The real question is this an area where we feel like we have room that we can go back and negotiate on something? Because most of the other proposals that are coming out, they're just red, they're not anything we're gonna pass, they're lines in the sand. This is one where we feel like there's some space to work. And so that's really the question we're asking is, do you agree there's some space to work?
So, and I think if we, there's some of the things are just devil in the details that we can solve. But if we have assurance that these buildings are gonna meet our building code, then I don't see a reason for us to be resistant to it. It is a way to make housing more affordable, and it actually offers a way to do ADUs that is acceptable too. I don't know if any of you've had the opportunity to see the exhibitor downstairs that is building modular units. Now they're building a unit that's customizable, that basically it comes in a kit. You take it out of a box and assemble it. So it's not like that, it's walls. But if we have assurance that, and if you look at what they've got, they can match that to look like an existing house that's already on the property. It's really customizable, but there's no reason we should be resistant, I think, to a housing product that promotes affordability and is quality. And we can solve how we assure that.
Mayor, can I add to one thing that so far in these conversations that I've heard in every conversation that we're going to keep hearing used as an example? Some of you may be even aware of this example. Can you think of anything else that's all of a sudden turned modular, built, created, and then being assembled on site? LDS temples are going to this. This is how they're going to build temples now. And that example is being used everywhere.
I actually went to the open house in Helena, Montana, and it was all modular, and they had a video showing how it came from Arkansas and all the whole process. It was very intriguing, and you couldn't tell at all.
Every conversation I've heard about this so far, that's the example that's been used, and it's going to keep happening. They're going to say, listen, and so there's a lot of just even that adds.
There are stories
the
about how they build basically skyscrapers in China that way. I mean, I think that's it. It's kind of like the way UDOT builds bridges, that where they're building them offsite and moving them on. It's an improvement in construction technique in a lot of ways.
Will that infrastructure be affected? Or just
Think just housing.
Yeah.
Think just housing. Right.
I may. So this isn't new to the United States. We've been doing these for years. They've improved these houses a lot that most people couldn't tell the difference when they look at them. And the way it happened in the past, the local jurisdiction just inspects the work that happens at the local site, not the house itself, because that's done by where it's being built. And having a Utah certified inspector, wherever that's going to be, isn't a big deal. That doesn't mean we send someone from Utah out there to go inspect it. That just means that inspector has multiple jurisdictions, so he knows what those requirements are. And those requirements aren't that different than the national requirements, because Utah take those national ones, then we make amendments to it. So it's not that big of a deal for them to be multi-jurisdiction inspector. So I don't see a big problem with that at all. Then it comes out, it meets our state requirements, which every city has to comply with the state requirements anyway for the building. And then we can do the local ones for the foundation, the connection of the plumbing, the connection of the electrical, which is how we're doing already at this point. And the fee they would charge you for would just be for the inspection of those small parts, not the entire building.
I actually appreciate the perspective of the craftsman who has done this and gets that. Thank you.
Have done it.
That's actually helpful.
There was one of these in the Parade of Palms, this most recently at the Realtors main office in Sandy. Did you, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see that, go and look at that. It's a small house, it's probably only, I don't know, it's not, maybe a couple hundred square feet is all. But it was built, purpose built, it's all steel framed, very nice looking, well built. They approached us about, there's an area we're looking at where they want to make like a modular community on an acre piece. So we're trying to work through how you would do parking but I mean, it would certainly be affordable. It's not very big, but it's still, but even that's 100-something thousand, even for that. So, but it's probably it for affordability, at least in my city, there's no question.
I don't object to the overall idea of this moving forward. It's just from having spent so much time with the Uniform Building Code Commission and watching, in particular, the Home Builders Association try and seriously erode the plumbing codes, electrical codes, the fire code at each point. And they go in, these codes are adopted at national meetings and they have these giant fights about whether you need GC5 plugs or whatever. And then
that's
whatever, yes. And they go pull them back out in our Utah bills, whatever is really expensive that they don't want to do. They come in, the state set up a process through the Uniform Building Code Commission to have our building inspectors and contractors and people like that serve on this, review all of these things, recommend a bill to the Business and Labor Committee that would be adopted and move through as an interim committee bill, which in theory means it's sacred and won't get touched. And then every single year, the home builders come through and Swiss cheese that bill. And that's my note of caution is that, if we're going to negotiate on this one and say, look, these can go through this other process that'll be less seen and less transparent. I just don't want us to then end up with a lower quality product at some point in our communities because we thought we were negotiating on housing affordability, but we lost on key components of the building code.
Right, it would have to be the same standard. You can't have two standards. It have to be the same standard.
Okay, so is there anybody that, assuming we can get obviously, it's all those details.
I won't quote you.
That would change our position, but otherwise, is there general consensus that this is something we might want to pursue basically as a policy? The good thing about this too is that it is like the subdivisions thing. It is so nice when we can actually say we can agree on this rather than saying no on everything.
So we have to go, there isn't a good reason to say no on this. We need to say yes, move forward. We just need to make sure that we're in the driver's seat as we go forward with it. So, thank you, Jared, for being the driver of that.
Okay.
So Mayor, let me walk through what I think we've heard. Jared presented the Municipal Attorneys Association this morning, and I walked point by point with them to get feedback from that whole group. Anything you want to summarize from municipal attorneys or like we've covered it here?
Everyone was supportive. That's the takeaway. Paul from Salt Lake City, the attorney there, they've adopted a code and they haven't seen any issues, any problems, quality or otherwise with the modular building. So that's just a good reference point, a good feedback, but positive feedback, not just in UMA or in the Municipal Attorneys Association, but also in the Rapid Growth Caucus. We asked that question and some had lived in modular homes and I think it was Lavercan mayor had lived in one. Others had also been involved in them, had very positive feedback. So
negative feedback I would predict might show up is we're using labor outside of Utah to do these, and so we're spending our money to outside the state, which is true.
I think one of the things that was pointed out to me earlier to that point is. If we're showing ourselves to be friendly here, the chance of getting some kind of facility where these are. There's already some facilities in Utah, but getting more facilities where it's bringing some jobs to Utah.
There you go.
Some of the real savings would come if they're being built close by and only transported 10 miles instead of 100 miles or 500 miles. So going down this road could really pay off in getting some jobs and getting some industry here in that base.
We can get a.
Where we'd welcome a motion from the board. Essentially prioritizing this topic, recognizing that there are several questions that have come up. Jared's outlined all the key policy points to work through. And September 18th, we have a follow-up meeting on modular with the Commission on Housing Affordability subgroup on this. But Jared's going to be presenting that. So that's why we'd like to have a board motion today saying, yes, we want to prioritize this and we can get to yes, as long as, they can try to think a better way than UBC doesn't turn into Swiss cheese, but as long as we respect the transparency of the process, as long as there's still health, safety and welfare authority at the city level, we still have our land use authority. But if we can get to yes in a space that facilitates offsite construction modular, it could make a big difference in affordability and it could be a win-win.
I say we move forward.
I'll second that.
So, we can frame a motion, basically that says, subject to, ensuring that the health, safety and general welfare of the public is protected by adherence to the state's building code. That we can support modular construction being centrally inspected at the point of manufacture.
Well, that's what you just said.
Yes,
Is that adequate?
Yes.
All right.
that's what I said.
Somebody make that motion. All right.
I second.
All right. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Perfect. Board will next meet on September 25th, which will be after Jared is working with the CHA subgroup on modular, so we'll likely have an update on the modular space. Also in September, we'll have the Guiding Our Growth report. You'll have the Envision Utah slides. We included them in the board packet. We're not going through them today, but that's the presentation that Envision did last month. Their report will come out in September as well. Justin, anything else you want to add on UEOC or advocacy space?
I just to reiterate a couple things, and I'll do it pretty quickly. One, Cam threw out that number earlier, how many bill files are open, just reiterating again.
I didn't use the number because I don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh, it would be 816. 816 bill files open.
There's no 1,000 yet.
Already?
When we ran the numbers last year, it was 28% more than that a month later. So they're opening bill files at a record pace. And this doesn't include any of these CHAR UBC bills that are coming up. So there are a lot of
45% are
yet to
helpers.
be. So as we continue to be, we're going to start bringing back very specific bills, language, policy proposals. So we have for a few months the luxury of debating and talking and thinking about things, and not that we won't continue debating and talking and thinking about things, but we're going to have to start being decisive on some points as well. So I guess just next time we meet, we'll probably have to start making some decisions on things. So be ready for that.
Can we just go back to the legislators and tell them we're gonna support 75% of what they present, so they might as well pick and choose right now.
For negotiating purposes, I would say.
Second.
Yeah, as Justin indicated, they're 28% ahead of where they were last year, which was, and as a reminder, that's a month, 28% a month earlier. And we worked on 240 bills last year.
And I changed that number to 35.
But these are all good bills.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So small government, right? Also in the packet, you'll see the results from the cities of first and second class meeting that we held over the summer. And there are a lot of issues that are not UEOC related there, and we are trying to stay on top of all of those. with the caveat that there are over 800 bill files open and the UEOC and everything else. So I want to publicly thank the league staff because it is a year-round session. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, and everybody works extremely hard year-round. And thank you for voting to expand our staff so that we could try to stay on top of all these moving pieces. Last thing in the executive director report is, I mentioned the National League of Cities engagement. We have tried to engage nationally so that we can get that professional our fellow state leagues. I mentioned that I was in the director's workshop and I presented on housing policy. I presented on local administrative advisor. We've had people from around the country who want to model the local administrative advisor once they see it up and running. And in fact, on housing and land use, we really are a leader in trying to solve problems, but also in trying to figure out how to improve our messaging and how we use data and the like. In fact, next month, we will be hosting a bunch of state leagues at league headquarters for a deep dive on housing, land use, and other issues. And they actually wanted to come to Salt Lake because of how outspoken we've been in this space. I also want to thank Mayor Shepherd because he's one of the representatives on NLC's Housing Accelerator, and he's been attending those meetings in his capacity on the NLC board, as well as representing us, and he'll be in DC 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, where they'll be having a discussion, surprise, surprise, on housing and land use. And we're sending Carson to attend that conference as well. League staff. League staff was at the staff workshop, taking advantage of that professional development opportunity. Nick presented about how we have increased revenue outside of membership dues. And demonstrate some of the unique things we've done with our conference and sponsors. Wanted to applaud Nick for being a leader among his peers around the country. And we really are working to build those relationships around the country. And so thank you again for your support of our staff so we can represent you to the best of our abilities. Mayor, it's been a long day. I appreciate everybody's time and attention. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Any final questions? For me?
So I have one thing I want to say. So first of all, this is my last board meeting and I'll chair. I'm going to pass the torch to Mayor Kaufusi, and it has been a privilege and an honor to serve as the president of this organization and to work with all of you and with the great staff of this organization. I've got to know them better through this session and all that, and they serve us very well. But I really have enjoyed my time, and I'm not going anywhere. For those of you who haven't heard, I'm fortunate enough to be unopposed in my re-election campaigns, which is a giant relief. But anyway, so I'll be available. Michelle, I will help you any way that I can, and the same thing for the staff. But I also learned from my predecessor to get out of the way when anyway, it's a pleasure, and thanks a lot for your support.